right, we are at the 15-minute mark. We are ready for our next session. And up next, we have Chris Beer on to talk about the Entrepreneurial Operating System, acronym EOS. So, hey, there we are. How we doing, Chris?
Hey, thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. So while you're getting ready for this presentation, a bit of background on Chris. For those of you that aren't familiar, she serves as a fractional integrator and COO for small businesses. So in this role, we talked about this at length, and I love this, is that you have a visionary that just wants to run through walls and you need someone behind you to clean up. And that's kind of what Chris takes on, is she executes on the vision of the founder with the mission to encourage focus, discipline, and accountability in your team, which I think is going to be the long-lasting success of a business. You're not going to make it very far if you don't focus on those things. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, a little bit how you got here, and let's jump into the presentation.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks again, Nick, for having me. Like you kindly described, I'm kind of like somewhat of a little bit of a garbage truck, moving, picking up all the forgotten toys that the visionary has come up with and started to play with, and also a little bit of air traffic control, because it is one thing to have these amazing, brilliant ideas and you have these amazing, brilliant people in the company. How do you marry the two and keep you moving forward without any planes crashing? So that is what we're going to talk about today, and I'm so excited. So if you're cool with it, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my deck.
Let's do it.
We will go. All right.
Love it. Made in Canva. All right, I see it.
Canva, number one app out there, right?
Yes.
All right. So today we're going to talk about better living through solid systems, and why I call it better living, and why I equate systems with a better quality of life, is because systems give you freedom. When you only have so much time, you only have so much energy, you only have so much space in here. Why not use it efficiently and give yourself the time and energy to focus on the things you love? So we'll do this tiny little introduction to me and just kind of how I think about businesses in terms of systems. We'll dive into the idea of better living through solid systems. And so we'll talk about why a financial studio owner needs clear and efficient systems. And then taking it a step further, what it means to bring all of those efficient systems into an operating system. And then going specifically into one operating system that I happen to love, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. And then if you're, all hook, line, and sinker on it, I can tell you how to get started with EOS. And the best part about it is that you don't need to pay any consultants or pay anything to get started. It's totally, doable to implement it on your own. So, don't think about this as a pitch or anything like that. I'm just trying to give you some options and show you how to get things done. And then we'll round it out, because Nick, I would love to have a chat with you and anyone else who's listening about real life challenges and tips and wins and all that stuff when it comes to systems and putting them into place in growing a company, because I know that those things sound fantastic on paper, but then when it comes actually time to
execute,
right, you got to execute, or you have to hand off your baby to someone else, and there's a lot that goes along with that. So strength in numbers. We'll end this session by talking through that.
Yeah, I know. I have some great stories that I can share, and hopefully we'll get some Q&A in there to talk about these people.
Fantastic. All right. So hopping into it, that's me. I'm Chris Beer, and I call myself the Wizard of Ops. And again, what that means, I love thinking about how to harness human energy and great ideas and get things moving in the same direction. And so I do that in a role called an integrator. And integrator is a EOS term, but it just in general, it means someone who works in your business, and they are marrying all of the pieces. They're taking the great big bold ideas that your visionary, that your founder seems to have every 5 minutes. That's what makes that person amazing, and also matching it with the skill set and the temperament of the people who are on your team, because those team members love you. But at the same time, when you have a new idea every time you meet with them, they don't love you as much. So I kind of act as this buffer, tell people when,
Yes.
I definitely act as a protector of the team, and but at the same time, keep us moving forward and keep the entire organization, from the visionary to the team members, every single team member on the org chart, keeping them aligned with the vision. What's the
Hmm.
reason that we started this company? It wasn't just to, it's not just because we like yoga. It's not just because we, wanted something to do. You have something bigger and bolder in mind. And so let's get together and get, heads focused down so we can separate what's, urgent from what's important, and then move forward on the important. So, and I did put that I have a specialization in the wellness industry. I work with companies that are outside of the wellness industry, and those give me great insights into how to bring great ideas back into the wellness industry.
Yeah,
Which
I
I think
think
is it's something we should always do, right? When we think about anything from marketing to sales to ops, don't just think about what is the studio down the street doing. Think about how Uber just got you to make the last sale, things like that, right?
I love exploring different businesses. It just feels like 70% of business, or I would say inside a business, 70% of it's all the same across every industry. And
Oh,
then
it's
that
it's all it's
30% is
all the
just
same
what makes
stuff.
it unique. Yeah. So
Exactly.
it's a great teacher to, like you said, pull you back into your problems.
Yeah. And kind of a segue to that, none of this is new stuff. And so it's things that you've heard before, you've read before, you maybe even said before, but sometimes things hit differently, right? And when you are that person who is knee deep in post-it notes and can't step away from your office, hearing something like, that you can't achieve your vision if you're always working in your business, that's going to hit real hard when you have those moments where you can't get away for a break, when you feel, overwhelmed with work, when you feel like you can't grow because you can't bring on quality people. So it's just a kind of a wake up call of it really does benefit you, it benefits the company to take the time to kind of level up and let someone do the work of in the business so you can work on the business. And we're going to go ahead and talk about what that means. So, systems in general. So, a system in general can be just something that can be replicated by someone else that you've written down the process for. It can be something as simple as putting on your socks, right? And I know there's controversy about which way should it be, sock, sock, shoe, shoe, should be, sock, shoe, sock, shoe. Everyone has a different way, but if your company feels very firmly that it is sock, shoe, tie the shoe, then write it down. And then you'll never be upset with the guy who is doing the sock business. And so systems in general are, I'm thinking about written processes, marrying processes to people, and what they give you is the ability to scale more quickly. You can see problems before they even happen. You can deliver this consistent experience to your customers and also to your staff, because when they're following a proven process, they know what's going to happen and it's going to be successful, and that's going to be great. They're going to feel better. When things are systemized and all of the inefficiencies are squeezed out, you're able to lower your labor costs, which is fantastic. And of course, you're able to build something that exists without you. So you're able to build something that, holds value and might perhaps sell one day. So that's systems as a whole. And I like to think of those as kind of one-off standing things. I'm a hand talker. And so what an operating system does is marries all of those parts. So you may have a rock star sales system and you are bringing people in through the door like crazy. And if you don't have complementary systems that all talk to each other, that all work together, it's kind of all for naught. So what I'm talking about with an operating system is not only thinking about a single process, a single how we get something done. It's more of a holistic, how do I use all of the human energy within my company to get closer to the goals, and also do it in a really systematic way where you're measuring your process, you're talking through problems, all of that good stuff. So like I have here, there are anything in your business can be systemized, how you put the toilet paper roll on, things like that. But what we're talking about today is an operating system that will give your leadership team the ability to work on your business. You want to think about things like, why do you have this business to begin with? What do you want to achieve in 3 years, 10 years? And I know that's a really scary thing. It's scary for a few reasons. One, we went through the last 2.5, 3 years, right? And so you do have that feeling of, oh God, how can I possibly say this is what's going to happen in 3 years? Because I don't know. And also it's very vulnerable. It's vulnerable to say, I want to bring my revenue up to X, because God forbid you fail, right? But if you don't name the what, people don't know what they're moving towards. So you need to name the what, you need to name what you're going after, and you need to name who needs to be on that bus, so to speak. And once you name who's going to be on that bus, you need to make sure that they have what's called GWC. So they get it, they want it, and they have capacity. Because we can all think of people on our teams, present or past, who have had maybe 1 or 2 of those things, but maybe they're the most brilliant people in the world and they super duper want it, but they want to do everything. And so therefore the capacity leg falls off. So
Yes,
making sure that all of those things are there, that the people on your team truly believe in the vision, because that makes all the difference. If you have the one person, if you have, your team of 10 people who are all like, yeah, this is the best idea we've ever come for, we're going to do anything we can to make this happen. And you have the one person who's sitting there in the all hands like, no way. It's like it's cliche,
it's a
but
cancer. No,
it's a
it's
cancer.
absolutely.
It's a
It's like
cancer,
mercury in the lake. It's gonna
right?
spread. Absolutely.
You got to scoop that shit out and just keep moving forward. And then once you think about, okay, well, here's this, here's destination and it's awesome. And I've got these awesome people. What's here, right? What's here? And how do we get from here to there? And how do we make it manageable? So the kind of small steps we're going to take to get there. And then how are we going to measure definition of done? And making sure that everyone agrees on those things. And again, all of this stuff, it sounds super basic. Do we make the time to do it in our day-to-day? No, because stuff's breaking all the time in our businesses.
Yes.
And so more often than not, we're using the bucket to bail things out instead of thinking about long-term. So again, that's what an operating system is. There are several ways to go about bringing an operating system into your business. An operating system is not software. We tend to think of like iOS, but an operating system is not software. It is it's a set of principles by which you will run your business. And there are many out there. I'm going to specifically speak to EOS, but I keep in mind, I'm going to talk about EOS. What works is what you consistently use. I have people who will ask questions about task management systems, and they'll say, I really want to use Asana, but Sue really likes her pen and paper thing that she's been doing forever. And you know what? If the pen and paper thing that works forever, the Post-it notes, if there are certain things that work and the entire team buys into it, then that may be the right thing for you. And so I'm going to introduce one system that I truly believe in. That being said, a lot of things are the same with some of them. So if there's one that you really like, just take a big bite into it and everybody lean in. So what I like, dare I say love, about EOS is that it's stupid simple. And I think that when we introduce things that are too complex, one, you don't get total buy-in from the group. And then two, it's hard to stick with and it's hard to maintain. So I like EOS because it can and does apply to any industry. And it's based upon just these 6 core things that affect every single business. So kind of going around the circle here, with EOS, you have tools that look at the people. So again, we're talking about right people, right seat, that GWC component. Do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have capacity? Plus marrying all of that with, do they align with our core values? And not just the pretty core values that, like, you got this accessory off the wall kind of a thing. I'm talking the core values that you truly want to, have everyone in your business embody. So making sure that you measure those people by, again, their ability, their capacity, and then also who they are as a human being. Vision. So vision goes way out, and then it kind of zooms in a little bit. So with EOS, you start by thinking about your organization's vision 10 years out. Sounds super scary. Sounds like BS when you start putting the numbers down on paper and you're like, there's no way that we could potentially do this. But even if that's not the exact, say, city that you land in, that's the direction that you want to head in. So you need to be bold enough to put those numbers out there and then backtrack from there. So with EOS, you go through something called a VTO. It's a vision and traction organizer that helps you think about your vision. And your vision is everywhere from your 3 years out to 10 years out. And what do those broad goals look like? Then you break down the traction. And the traction, like, think about traction on a shoe, on the bottom of your shoes. Traction is the steps you're going to take so that you can get there. And you're going to break it down. Again, these are steps. They're not huge bounds. So vision, it's very important to get everybody on the same page. And for the example of a studio, you need to know who's your core audience. And you need to have everyone agree on that. And if there's big, huge, gaping disagreements, it's going to break down even to the smallest thing. It's going to affect your sales process. It's going to affect the way that you operate your classes. So having that vision shared by all is enormous. And it's often not something discussed at, in your day-to-day kind of meetings. Data. Of course, everyone knows data is important. ... What do you do with it? It's one thing if you are collecting the data, it's another thing to remember to look at it. And then it's another thing to be able to digest it and make actionable plans based on what you're digesting. So again, EOS has a certain meeting cadence set up where you're constantly looking at scorecards and measurables. A scorecard is what your team will do. So the sales team brought in this many new clients this month. They converted this many intro offers to recurring memberships. Measurables are what each person on the team is doing to build towards that goal. And then again, going around the circle here, process. So process, those are your systems. So again, systems are a part of this, but it's a part of the whole operating system. So you want to make sure that your processes are documented. You think that it is okay for things to live in your head. Of course it's not okay, because you can never leave. Also, even if you do love your business more than anything else in the world, if it's all in your head, you are the only one who can provide that experience. And so even if you're there 24 hours a day, you're really limiting your growth, because if someone is interacting with another team member, they're going to get a different experience. It's not going to be the same. So again, agree on what your processes are and make sure that they're followed by all. Traction is that counterpoint to vision. So vision is this big, broad, oh my gosh, this is where I want to end up on my road trip. Traction are the stops along the way. And so breaking it into manageable components, making sure that everyone get those wins, and that they're small enough and defined where if things get off track, it's easy to get them back on track. And then lastly, issues. So issues. Nick, does your company have any issues?
Never.
Never, right?
Plenty. We're always
right?
tackling. This one stuck out to me. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah. So whether it's business or life, what happens when you don't talk about, say, a small issue?
Oh, they just fester and get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right. And so EOS meetings every week, you have a dedicated time to do what's called IDS, and it's identify, discuss, and solve the issues that your company is facing. And a couple things happen in that are pretty powerful. One, when you do get in the groove of having these meetings, that 9 o'clock group text that comes out because someone like just thought of something and they're like, holy shit, we all need to hop on a Zoom right now and figure this out. That doesn't happen
Mm,
because there's very little that's burning the house down where you truly need to gather at that moment. But the reason why that person is sending out that emergency text is because they're worried that you will never get to that issue, that you
yeah.
will never talk about it. And if you have that security of, okay, Monday between 9 and 10:30, all we do is talk about what's wrong with this place.
Yeah.
And we not only talk about it, but you talk about it in such a way that what you're trying to extract is the solve. And the solve does not mean, oh, it's gone. Like, oh, we don't have enough clients. Oh, poof. Now we talked about it for 10 minutes and now we never have to think about it again. It's that you have an action plan in place that you will revisit next week and you'll measure your progress. So,
Yeah, I love
yeah, go
that
ahead.
topic more than I thought I was going to, because it's funny because we have tons of weekly check-ins, and the point of the weekly check-ins is positive, negative, whatever. Save those bullet points for that weekly check-in because, like you said, Tuesday at 3:30, I'm thinking about
Right.
my Tuesday at 3:30 task. Wednesday at 1 o'clock, if that's our weekly check-in, that's when I'm going to be mentally, emotionally prepared for this conversation. So it kind of like segments your week into this is when it's a dedicated time to talk about it. And when you kind of have that problem solving culture, these issues just feel like opportunities and challenges to get better. And then your team isn't afraid to talk about them. It's like, hey, we know we're great in so many areas, but we're not doing great here. Imagine where we could be this time next year if we solve this problem. And then, like you said,
Yeah.
it's not we're not going to solve it in 10 minutes. We're going to come up with a plan, a hypothesis. We're going to test it. We're going to work
Yeah.
on it. We're going to talk about it at that next weekly check-in. We're going to see if it's getting better or worse. And it's just kind of, yeah, I feel like that is a cultural difference between companies of like, how do you embrace issues?
Exactly. And issues are not a bad thing.
No,
And
they're an opportunity to grow.
they're opportunities to grow. And the fact that you're talking about them on a weekly basis hopefully means that you're catching them when they're small. Of course, there are going to be the issues that get thrown on the issues list that are enormous. But hopefully, most of them are going to be just these little budding issues that you're going to talk about as a team and move through it together. So again, these 6 components, which are really, if you think about it, what business doesn't have these 6 things? I think
Or
these
could
six,
use these 6 things. I
or
think there's
could use
businesses
these
that
six
don't
that
have
use you
them.
right, could use some attention to these 6 things.
Yes.
So this is why I think it's a great, stupid, simple system that is really well applied to just about any business of any size, any industry.
Right, we're
Um,
working through this, and I'm almost forgetting that we're talking to fitness studios. Because it's like, this is every business, this is every freaking organization, you know? You could be a volunteer group, and it's like, you still need these things because you need buy-in from a group of people to achieve a common goal.
I mean, it's funny you say that because there are some EOS implementers who like try to do this in their family, and people are like, no, 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 like no 90-minute meeting, like,
That is a
or,
little too, that is a little
there's
bit
like
tougher, but
there's the line, right? But yeah, absolutely.
I think
There's
anytime you have a common goal, then you could
yeah,
talk about it. If your family doesn't have a common goal to work
right.
towards, this could be a little, redundant. But if you have an organization working towards a goal, this feels doesn't even feel critical. It feels like the bare minimum, you know?
It's the bare minimum, and they're all interwoven because, like we said, with the people component, you could have um I'm going to use sales just because that's an easy one with numbers, but you could have a sales superstar who's bringing in amazing numbers, but doesn't fit the culture and therefore doesn't like to follow processes because they're a cowboy or cowgirl. And so when you put all these things together, it helps you evaluate, is this the right fit for our company? As
Yes.
opposed to, I don't really like how this feels, or the flip side of it, like we just have to go along with it because they make money for us right now.
which feels like it gets let go in the early days, and then as you start to get bigger and bigger, you're like, this isn't going to scale. This isn't going to work.
Exactly, because then you've taken little problem that you didn't realize was a problem, but
Yes.
little problem, got sneaky big.
Yes.
So again, total heart for EOS because it's in my mind, it's very simple to wrap your head around and
Hmm.
say, yeah, that makes sense. And you need to think about that with organizations because you want buy-in from every level, from the founder down to someone scrubbing a toilet and in between.
Hmm.
And so you can't have some super advanced theory and expect that everyone learned it in college and they're going to,
Yes.
right? And so I feel like this is something that everyone can get on board with. It's a manageable, when you think about, like we kind of talked about that, time boxing the time to work on issues. Yeah, everyone can make 90 minutes in their week if they
Right.
know that they're going to have this dedicated time to work on the business.
Hmm.
So, with that all being said, if you're like, holy smokes, this is amazing, I want to learn more, um, I'm happy to be a resource for anyone who wants to kick around ideas about this. But the first place I would start is there's a book called Traction by Gino
Mm.
Wickman, and it's just kind of the classic book of the EOS library. And I remember reading it, Nick. I think I shared this with you. I remember reading it in an airport
Yes.
a couple of years ago, and I was like, ah, that's a cool or neat idea. And then I read it a couple of years later as I was part of an organization that was a little bit, you know, going in five directions.
Yeah.
And it really hit home because one, I was like, oh gosh, there are other people who are struggling with this, this energy going in
Hmm.
a lot of different directions. And oh, there's a solution for it. And that felt really empowering. And one of the things that is discussed in Traction are these two different but complementary personality types, which are the visionary and the integrator.
Mm.
And so that's what this next one, the crystallizer assessment is. And it's a free tool that's on EOS's website that helps you understand what your tendencies are. And so do you lean more towards that visionary, that big ideas, thinking about the culture, the big strategic partnerships, relationships, that energy of the organization? Or are you more of a no person like me? That's my job. I basically say no all the time. As an integrator,
Keep
you're
you
taking all
focused.
those, yeah, you're taking all those big, juicy, awesome ideas, and you're like, that's super cool, but we don't have time for that right now. So sorry,
Right.
no.
I feel
Right.
like we say that all the time, and it's a positive thing. Like, it's not that it's a bad idea. It's
Yeah,
just not the right idea. It's not optimized idea for where we're at today. And
exactly.
that's a big part of it. If you saw the side of my face, I was looking up that crystallizer assessment. That's so interesting because we've been talking about this with kind of getting the most out of people. Is, are you a visionary or an integrator is one question. Are you a manager or an individual contributor is another question.
Hmm.
Are you a creative or are you kind of, I don't want to say operator, but like, do you like to rinse and repeat or do you need to problem solve and get creative and face problems? Can you get into flow state where you could
Yeah,
focus on something for 10 hours? Or can you leverage kind of adult ADD to your advantage and say, no, I can do 10 different departments in a day. Every 15 minutes, I can switch my brain. I know that I can. I know my business partner can get into a flow state for 12 hours and I could never. So it's kind of interesting of like this crystallizer is just the one piece, but kind of breaking down people into like, who are you? What makes you tick? What makes the most out of you? And then to the people part of that circle, it's like, all right, now where can we put you to get the most out of you? Because I do feel like everyone's a superhero in their own way. But if you don't find that way, of course they're not going to think
right.
it's a superhero.
No, that's spot on. I think awareness is such a huge piece of it.
Yes.
And I'm like a continuing education junkie. So I just finished this culture index workshop.
Okay.
And culture, it's a personality, like a behavioral assessment that works very nicely with EOS. And um I think one of the most interesting things that our facilitator said was to think about not just the golden rule, but to think about the platinum rule. So the golden rule is, do unto others as you would want done unto you. This is to think about the perspective, treat someone as they want to be treated, not as you want to be treated.
Yes.
You might say, yeah, do you want to do something different every 15 minutes? And you're like, yes, and then but then your co-founder is going to say, that sounds absolutely crushing. And you can only ask those crushing things of a person in a blue moon, or once in a blue moon. So again, the crystallizer assessment is just like kind of tipping the, hey, where do I fall in all of this?
Yeah.
And knowing that they're assessments, they're not tests. Okay. So there's no bombing it.
That's a good difference. Yeah. Don't be afraid to take an assessment.
Don't be afraid to take an assessment. And there are going to be people who are kind of like almost, 50-50 of visionary integrator. There might be people who are like, 90-10. It just depends. And that's going to tell you who your matching puzzle piece is.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have the 90-10 guy trying to fit with a 50-50 gal, it might be a kind of a, you have to step on the puzzle piece a little bit.
Right.
So again, awareness is all key. And then as you're thinking about EOS or just an operating system in general, think about, again, kind of that, that road trip, that 3 to 10 years out. What's your wish list? Like, why are you doing this to begin with? If you're doing it because Nick and Chris said it's cool, don't do that. Like, or you're doing it because you heard the studio down the street is doing it, or your friend's business is. Think about, what is my wish list? Based on what you know about it, what do you want to get out of it? And I think that one of the most, just one of the most impactful things that can come out of it from a visionary standpoint. So visionary, you're the big idea person, and you love people, and you love creating this big thing. One thing that EOS does, or any operating system, is creates a buffer between you and your people. So you like creating these big juicy ideas, and then you're like, yeah, go do that. I'm going to go think of something else. And then naturally they're going to come back. The people are going to come back to you either with, hey, I did that thing, or hey, I have a clarification about that thing.
Questions.
Right. And you're all sorts of annoyed because you're like, I'm thinking over here. I'm doing the big picture stuff. I'm doing the kind of stuff I love. And so your wish list as a visionary could be, hey, I want to stay in my zone of creation and pumping people up, and then handing it off to someone that I know it'll get done.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're part of the team where everything is willy-nilly and there's, I think of visionaries sometimes as volcanoes, just like spurting these amazing ideas, amazing lava everywhere. And so they're spurting these ideas everywhere. And maybe you want to just kind of, manage the flow a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So thinking about your wish list, what will an operating system afford you? And with that, not only think about what it affords you, what it affords your team. So have this discussion with your team. There is no going into your next company meeting and saying like, oh, we're running at EOS level 10 style now, buckle up.
Get that buy-in.
Get that buy-in, right? The buy-in with anything is going to, lead to enthusiasm about the subject. And then lastly, so EOS has an online learning portal called Rocket Fuel. They talk about rockets because right combination, things take off. So Rocket Fuel is an amazing resource. There are a ton of free video courses. There are monthly calls that are led by certified EOS professionals that for different parties. So almost think about them as like marriage counseling. So you have calls that are for both the integrator and the visionary to attend together, and you're getting kind of coached up by people who have been there, done that. Or there are calls where there are just integrators on the line. And they're like, holy moly, have you heard this? And you can walk through things together. And then same thing for visionaries. So again, those are all free resources. There are other, paid opportunities, but I think it's a great way if you're interested in this, again, think about how it'll benefit you. Think about, how your team will be affected. Are they excited about this? And then just start by checking out the free resources before doing anything
Hmm.
else. So that is about it for my little tour of my love affair. And then just I get so excited about systems because again, it when you put these guardrails in place, it just gets the team working together. It's really magical. And so in closing, you're going to hear a lot of great guidance today. And I just really am asking everyone to think about this is fantastic. I'm going to take this one step at a time. I'm not going to do
Yes.
everything all at once. But when I do start doing things, I'm just going to think about what's going to get me from here to there.
Hmm.
And so that's the things that help you to clarify and simplify and achieve your vision. It's those broader steps, such as an operating system. So with that all being said, this is not goodbye. We're gonna take some questions. I'd love to talk with you, Nick, about your experience with this within your own company.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were absorbing. I don't see any questions coming in. I know one of my favorite things that I learned today was, and it's funny because I feel like a lot of this stuff is not so much learning something new, just being reminded, and then how can you implement it like tomorrow? And the thing that I took away to implement tomorrow is that GWC, because I
Yeah,
feel like you're just spitting out ideas and it's really, do they get it? Like, it's always like, I don't know,
yeah,
when you're becoming an entrepreneur and you kind of have some new idea, it's like, does your grandma understand what you're trying to do? Does your
right.
7-year-old nephew understand what you're trying? I don't care what a 30-year-old with an MBA if they understand it, can kind of piece it together. I want to know that
Yeah,
your grandma can regurgitate your plan. So I think
yeah,
that that first piece of, do they get it? Obviously, do they want it? That's kind of having the right team member in place.
yeah.
Are they team oriented? And then I love the, do you get it? And then, do they have the capacity? Because there's like,
That is the blessing of getting it and wanting it. Sometimes you get given the gift of more work. Weird,
right,
right?
right.
Right.
And it's just
Yeah.
kind of like, yeah, you could crush this. So I think a big thing is, it's just, I ask myself this, and when I talk to people that are in the employee position, whether it's my employees or other or friends of mine, and they talk about a manager that, because they're a really hard worker and their manager throws more work on, and it's kind of like, just rebound with the question of, hey, I already have these things in place that I'm doing. This is how I'm prioritizing the things I'm doing. Where do you see this new project fitting in? And the first
Yeah.
time I got asked that, I was like, I was not offended at all. I was like, that's a great point. We only have so much time in the week. Like, do
Yeah.
I think this new idea is more important than any of the things you're working on? No, forget I even said it. Yes, let's replace it here. And now you just become very, very aligned on what your expectations are for that day, that week, that month. And yeah, I love that capacity question, because that was a big problem of new idea, new idea, new idea. A month later, I felt like I had all these ideas last month. What happened to them? And it's like, they disappeared because you didn't check if anyone had the capacity to do it.
Right. Exactly. And I think having that again, like those guardrails in place of it's okay for me to throw out this brand new idea, knowing that we're probably going to have to go through the does this fit in? Um, but I'm not going to be scared to put it out because
Yes.
there's, it helps me go through the okay, where does this fit in along the plan? And does something else need to be reprioritized? Again, I think it all boils down to healthy communication with the
Yeah.
team. And that's what,
And feel like they can manage up.
everything comes down to people issues.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, I
right?
think, what did I just hear the other day? It was kinda, I think it was Henry Cavill saying stories that his grandpa told. I think I saw this earlier this morning, and he said, like 80% of professional success comes from how you deal with people.
Yeah.
Every business, whether it's your team or your customers, at the end of the day, everyone's a person. Your ability to
Yeah.
work with other people becomes huge, huge.
Right. And so if you have a system that allows you to have good communication in place, that allows you to tap into data instead of like gut, like, oh,
Mhm.
we're gonna let go of that guy because he sucks.
Yeah.
I think, and then also something that helps you manage expectations. from both
Hmm.
sides, because you're going to have the visionary of like, let's go take over the moon, and the integrator who's like, whoa, we're still working on all this stuff down here on earth. um, to manage both of those expectations, I think that's the best thing you can do to just set your company up for success and then still like what you do.
Yeah, yeah. One story I'll share, and I feel like the sales process is kind of the easier, is it feels like a more series of steps. And
Hmm.
one thing we did in the beginning was we tried to say one person will take you from you're interested in fit degree all the way to you're a paying client and I'll support you when you have questions. And there
Okay.
was so many steps in between, right? It's like you're interested, let's have a time to talk about it, let's do the demo. You're ready, let's move into the onboarding phase. You're coming from another software, let's transfer your data over. Okay, now you're about to launch, let's get this messaging out to your clients. Okay, you've
Yeah.
been launched for 3 weeks, these questions come up, you have them for me. Ooh, I can't answer them because I'm in the middle with the next person doing all
Yeah.
the other. And it was this concept of, okay, the way we're going to be different in the industry is you're going to have a one person rep, you're going to have your own personal rep. And it was
Yep.
selling in the beginning, it worked in the beginning, it was a breath of fresh air for people. And it was about 50, I think we hit client number 50, and I was like, this is never going to fucking work. Like, we are not going to get very far with this. We need to, and how do we still deliver a great experience? But what we did was one person does the demos, one person does the onboardings. Now we
Yeah.
have one person doing the data transfer. We have another person doing the support. And as long as they're all well-trained staff, then it's a great experience for the customer. And what I found, what one thing used, one of the bullet points in here was delivering a consistent experience to the customer. And I felt
Hmm.
like I was not delivering a consistent experience to every customer when I was trying to do 4 different things, or when someone else is trying to do 4 different things. Once I had people kind of specialize in their role, and we did get pushback from the customers of what happened to my personal rep. I was promised a
Right.
personal rep, and it was kind of like, hey, we identified that you're actually going to get a better experience, and we authentically mean this, that you will get a better experience with these specialized roles than you will with a personal rep. The personal rep's not scalable. We fucked up, and now we changed. And sure, there were a couple customers that still felt like they, got the ball and chain over the wool over their head of like,
Yeah.
this was what I promised. But more, I would say over 80% of the customers were like, I get it. Thank you for your transparency. I appreciate you being
Yeah.
vulnerable with me. And we all moved on. And, now every new customer we get on, I know they're going to have a consistent experience. And then when parts of that funnel break down, they're so identifiable of where
Right.
it's happening, who's the person I need to talk to, and then coach that person up, fix that problem, fix that issue, and then move on. So that was a quick story of just, or maybe not too quick, but a story of just how we identified like this great visionary idea. It didn't work. We need to put a system in place. We need to document it, because
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to cut you off with, but I didn't want to disrupt your flow. The documentation process I found so helpful for 2 reasons. One, writing things down. It is so easy just to talk and talk and talk and
Hmm.
talk and feel like you're making sense, and then have everyone walk away feeling good for a moment. And then 2 minutes later, after being like, I don't know what the fuck we just talked about. So I
Right.
feel like documenting forces you to write things, it forces you to make sense of things. And then the other piece of it is like, okay, you're not worried about any of your team members leaving your company. You think everyone's bought in, you think everyone's happy. Okay, it's, I'll say, I used to say, what happens if you get hit by a bus, right? It's just like, what happens to all
Yeah.
of that
Yeah.
knowledge? But now, maybe even more real life, what happens when one of your team member gets COVID and they're down for 2 weeks? How do you
Right.
fill that role? How do you, like, how you can't get that knowledge from them? They can't talk. They are down and out for a week or two, and the company is still moving on. There are still
Yeah.
customers that need help. And so I just think, yeah, that documentation process of like, what happens when just a real life thing happens when someone gets sick? How do you replace that?
And the documentation doesn't mean turning your people into robots.
Right.
Good documentation
It's like a
is
framework.
it's documenting just 20% of the
Yeah.
things that you do 80% of the time. And there's a lot of wiggle room in there for me to add the extra exclamation point at the end of my, my
Yes.
end of my email, or put my little
Put an
spin on
emoji in
it,
there. Yeah.
put the emoji in it or whatever it is. But it it it's identifying that 20% that everyone's going to do, that's going to deliver that consistent experience, while letting people still, put their own touch on it and make their own improvements and all of that good stuff. But if you don't have that bit written down, you don't have a company.
That makes it feel so less overwhelming too, of like you are only documenting about 20% of what's happening. The
It's
rest of
literally
that is the
it's I
critical
say it's I
thinking.
say it's caveman speak.
Right.
Right? Like, you are not thinking about every toggle and button within your CRM. You're just thinking about, okay, what are the three things that I'm doing? I'm writing in terms of fragments of sentences.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
if
it's
I had to
not
get
meant for
someone
a
up to
new
speed,
person to read. It's meant for like,
no.
we're gonna coach you, and then you're gonna refer back to this documentation to keep you on track.
Exactly. So, hopefully everyone leaves this feeling that at the bare minimum,
Yeah.
things need to be documented.
Yes,
And
yes,
then,
yes.
once you've documented those things, start to marry all of these processes and start to get your different divisions talking to each other and getting out of that, just like, okay, let's cover the right now. Let's cover what if someone gets sick or something like that, to
Mhm.
thinking, what if I want to open up another location? What if
Yeah,
things like that? And it's that, bringing in an operating system that will let you achieve those big, bold things.
yeah, I love it. And one thing I want to add, sort of, even if we have some solopreneurs out there, is like you say you wear many hats. Think
Oh,
about
yeah.
your division as your hats and be like, even
Yeah.
if marrying those divisions together, marrying those hats together, it's a little bit of personality disorder, but you have to sit there and be like, I'm a salesperson. Did I appreciate what the marketing person did for me? Did I appreciate what the instructor did for me when I got that new client in the door? So wear the hats, whatever that is. But yeah,
Exactly.
I love this. This is great. We will have this recording up. We will have hopefully we get the slide deck so people can kind of walk through it on their own. We'll have links to those resources. I have a few of them up on my other screen right here. They look great. And if someone
Fantastic.
wants to get in touch with you, is that QR code?
It's that QR code.
Perfect. So if you're watching this now, pull your phone out. If you're watching this recorded, pull your phone out, and we'll have all the links to connect with you, Chris. That was amazing.
Thanks so much, Nick. Always great to hang out.
For sure. All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.